Hello, everybody. I see folks trickling in. Welcome to today's webinar, today's conversation, all about how your education program can fuel your organization in 2025. I'm Natasha. I am the head of marketing at CourseStorm. We're one of the three organizations that is putting this webinar on for y'all today. Each of our organizations serves a different part of supporting arts and nonprofit businesses. And all of our speakers here are going to talk a little bit more to that today. But I am going to go through a couple of very quick housekeeping things, and then we will jump into what is going to be a thrilling conversation for you all today. Feel free to use the chat while you're here. Let us know where you're dialing in from, where you're joining in from. I am generally based in Vancouver, Canada, but today I'm actually calling in from surprisingly sunny London. Okay, so as I said, a few housekeeping things. Today's webinar is being recorded. We will share the recording with you afterwards, so no worries about taking notes or recording on your own. You will get the recording. Like I said, please use the chat to engage with us, drop your thoughts, drop your questions. I'll be monitoring. And also use the Q&A function in Zoom if you have a specific question that you want the panel to ask. We're going to have kind of a more formal conversation, and then we will likely have time at the end of the session for live Q&A. So the panel is ready for your questions. Please ask them. And finally, oh, that's really it. Those are all my housekeeping things. I'm going to stop sharing my slides, and we will get into meeting our panel. So like I said, I'm Natasha. I lead marketing at CourseStorm. We're going to start with a little bit of an icebreaker question as well. What I would really love to hear from the panel is about the last class you took or a new thing that you learned that really moved you. And same for everyone who's here as an attendee. If you have something you want to share, please drop it in the chat. And I am going to start it off with Laura from FundraiseUp. So tell us a little bit about yourself, about FundraiseUp, and a class that has moved you recently.
Wonderful. Hi, everybody. My name is Lara Wong, and I am the Partnerships Manager for Technology Ecosystems at FundraiseUp. I have been working in the nonprofit space and technology specifically for over a decade, but in nonprofit for almost 25 years. FundraiseUp is an organization and a platform that's looking to take away any friction points within the donor experience. So from the donor to the back-end integration and reporting, trying to make that as easy as possible to help nonprofits not only to have a great donor experience, but also to raise more money for the incredible missions that they care about. I love this question, Natasha, about the most transformational class because I actually used to live in Vancouver. I'm based in Ottawa, Canada now. But when I was in Vancouver, my very first thing that I did, probably about 4 months in, was pick up a brochure for learning to row. And this Learn to Row course ended up kicking off a whole bunch of incredible outcomes for my life to, finding the eventual career I ended up in, discovering that I'm actually really athletic, discovering that I'm very competitive, and ultimately meeting my spouse. So it really was one of those transformational activities that I did without even thinking about it at the time. I'm just very grateful for the Vancouver Rowing Club and their Learn to Row program.
Wow, I love that so much. Thank you for sharing, Laura. And I think this is part of what gets us all so excited about what we do and what we're going to talk about today, which is extending your impact via education. So love to hear it. Love to have you here. I'm going to pass it to Sam next to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. Yes, hi, I'm Sam. I'm the client relations lead for the US and Canada at Spektrix, and I also lead Spektrix's global fundraising team. I've been at Spektrix for about 7 years, but prior to that, I worked in box office and fundraising roles myself at arts and culture organizations in the US. If you haven't heard of Spektrix yet, we are a holistic ticketing, CRM, fundraising, marketing solution built specifically for the arts and live entertainment. And we currently serve about 750 clients in the US, Canada, UK, and Ireland. And the organizations that we get to work with also can directly integrate with other really great products such as CourseStorm and FundraiseUp. So very happy to be here all together today. Yeah, the class that I took that transformed me, it's not recent, but I think it'll be like a really nice one to resonate with a lot of the audience here. But it was the first theater class that I took. It was an elective, it was required. I had never done theater before. It was just like the class that all my friends were taking, and it completely changed the course of my life. It's what I decided to then go to university for, so I majored in theater management. That's what my career has been in and what it will stay in. So I think like in terms of like really transforming, first theater class ever.
Heck yeah. I feel like a lot of folks here can relate to that. Certainly I can relate to that. Part of like ending up even being on this webinar presenting to everyone today, there's a thread of theater and performance in all of that. Thank you for sharing, Sam. And Brian, round us out. Tell us about who you are, who CourseStorm is, and something that transformed you.
Sure, happy to. So yeah, I'm Brian Rahill. I'm the CEO of CourseStorm. I have been working at the intersection of technology and education for 25 years. Um, in my master's degree, I wrote a thesis, actually, strangely enough, supporting teachers' resistance to technology in the classroom. So kind of come all the way around to seeing a lot of the power of education and technology in that mix, and particularly helping people get access to education. So what we do at CourseStorm, we're an impossibly simple online registration and marketing platform for lifelong learning orgs. And excuse me, we're working with arts and culture organizations all across the US and helping them promote their offerings, grow their community impact through education. And this is going to sound a little weird based on the fact that it's a bunch of arts organizations here, but the most transformative class for me was actually a microbiology class that I took. And it was, first of all, the teacher was so passionate about it, so you just couldn't help but get drawn in. And then I think what was really interesting to me is it just opened up an entirely new way of seeing and just being able to view microscopic structures, and like the beauty of their design was really something. And it was just really eye-opening. So I got an entirely new lens on the world, and it helped me to understand that I think if you just slow down, you look closely, there is beauty everywhere around us. And that was really awesome.
Wow, what a lovely share. And isn't that also the crux of it all, just learning to see things differently? I realized that I didn't share anything. I'll share a recent one, a transformative class that I took. It was actually my first life drawing class. I'm a big thinker, a big talker. Drawing and visual artsy things terrify me. I'm very bad at them. So doing that requires a lot of effort from me to be like, I'm going to go be bad at this thing. But I found it so meditative and communal and quiet and calming. And it's been a practice that I've been able to go back to when I just need some soothing time in my life, and to kind of lose myself in trying to be good at something and just enjoy the process. So thank you everyone for sharing. Let's get into today's conversation. Before we kind of dive deeper on education, I would love to broaden the aperture a little bit. You all are working with arts and nonprofit organizations every day, right? We're having all these conversations. I would love to hear, heading into 2025, what would you say are some of like the key trends and challenges and opportunities that organizations are facing? I'd love to start with you, Brian.
Sure. Thanks, Natasha. I mean, what we're hearing from arts organizations is pressure from all sides, financially, certainly, but also from their local community, patrons, board. I think financially, they're trying to make the numbers work, always, and become a sustainable organization. So the board's tasking them with what's that right mix of grants, donations, ticketing revenue, and education revenue that's going to create a strong foundation for their program. And I think they're looking for that sustainability. And sometimes they're seeing community shift, the needs of the community shifting. So, for instance, we work with American Stage in St. Petersburg, Florida, and they saw an influx of young families during the pandemic. And traditionally, that was like a retiree community, and they were serving a certain demographic. And now all of a sudden, their offerings needed to be focused on the community needs of the youth in the community. And they're seeing parents wanting to get their children into these classes to help with their social and emotional learning, which was so lacking and so challenged during the pandemic. So it's both a challenge. How do we solve this new need that's come up in our community, but also like a real significant opportunity?
Thanks, Brian. So I'm hearing financial pressures. I'm hearing shifting community expectations. That's kind of always happening. I'd love to hear, Laura, from your perspective, what you're hearing at FundraiseUp, any of the challenges, trends, opportunities. And also, for those of you in the audience, please feel free again to use the chat and share anything that you're facing or experiencing or looking ahead at in your organization.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think looking at it more so from a higher ed lens, there's a bit of an enrollment cliff. So we're seeing a lot of people not necessarily choosing to move forward with a traditional higher education as a pathway for education due to costs, perception of the value of an education, and more. And so, for us as an organization that supports and enables fundraising, I mean, it's kind of a good news, bad news, but you have fundraising as a way to fill the gap to keep education programs in place. And organizations are being forced to go to individuals as grants dry up, or as the means to access them are increasingly difficult. So it does make platforms like FundraiseUp much more necessary, and provide them with that ability to raise more funds for the programs that they need to do that too. The other, I think, trend that we're seeing, just going back to enrollment going down, the non-traditional pathways, are starting to demonstrate the same or better outcomes. Steve Jobs famously dropped out of university and still built Apple. So I think that some people really think, okay, do I need to spend 4 years and $150,000 to get to the end that I want to go? And maybe in arts in particular, that's not necessarily the best approach. So a little bit of a different perspective from us.
Yeah, no, but super interesting and super relevant, right? As those sort of non-traditional pathways change, as people's appetite to enroll in higher ed shifts, because it has to, there's this gap, particularly in the arts, and we're seeing arts be cut in a lot of schools, unfortunately. And so there's this gap. And as Brian sort of said, there's this opportunity as well. I'd love to hear, Sam, from you all at Spektrix, what you're seeing.
Yeah, and I mean, we work with a lot of arts and culture organizations that are doing very different things, a lot that are widespread in a lot of the different regions that we serve. For all of them, what we're really seeing is income is harder than ever to generate. And a lot of it's coming from different sources because of that. So speaking specifically about the US, like overall volume of ticket sales, still slightly below those 2019 levels. And while average prices have increased by about 18%, on average, that's still 5% below inflation. So that leaves theaters and arts organizations relying more on other forms of income, notably donations. That's a big one. And in the US and Canada, more people are adding donations to their ticket purchases, but the value of those donations has dropped. So that means it's more important than ever to really tell a compelling story to everybody that you're interacting with. And so education programs, youth classes, community courses, those can really, really be at the heart of that storytelling.
Yep. Yep. Well, that segues so perfectly into my next question, which is really like, okay, looking at these realities, looking at these challenges, looking at these opportunities, let's talk about why education, specifically education programs, are such a critical opportunity for orgs to consider as we head into the new year. And Sam, I'm going to keep going with you. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, I mean, what we found at Spektrix, again, looking at all of our aggregate data, 54% of audiences were first-time ticket buyers. That's huge. And so if that's true for you at your organization, it's finding those more innovative ways to connect with future audiences and future donors is going to be more important than ever. So, of course, like education is very critical for its own sake, playing your part in the community, bringing together all of the benefits of arts participation for people in your own community and the health of that. But also thinking in terms of revenue, it's such a critical way to connect with new audiences, and you're building your relationship for those future audience members and donors. And that's what makes it so important that you're able to get all of that data in one place. So getting all that data from your education programs into your CRM so it can talk to your fundraising, your marketing, your ticketing platform. So teams working with Spektrix and CourseStorm, those can instantly pass the participant from your education programs, and then you can then have them engage with all of the different parts of your organization, like buying tickets to shows, things like that. And you're really building a more complex, multi-layered relationship across the organization that's going to last years and years to come.
That's awesome. I love to hear you introduce this idea of kind of a holistic approach, right? And we are going to get into that a little bit more later in this conversation because it's so, so important that your education program isn't just siloed, that it's all working together. Brian, going back to kind of this original question of education being such a critical opportunity, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to echo some of the things that Sam said. The thriving education program, I think you use the word connect. It's just like it's a new way to connect with your community and form some really deep connections. So we saw during the pandemic a number of arts organizations started up, particularly theaters. If they didn't have an education component, they started up small scale educational offerings to help generate revenue during a time when they couldn't have large audiences in their venues. And the ones that did that are now seeing that benefit of again, a more holistic approach to how they're interacting with their community. And I think the thing that's really interesting about education programs is this is not a passive experience. This is a really active engagement with your organization. Someone that is taking education with your organization, they're going on a personal growth journey. They're learning something new. They're in a lot of ways risking something to learn something new and being vulnerable, and then having that experience of increased capacity through your programming. Like that is a really deep connection with your organization, and to be part of their personal growth. As sort of Sam said, you're building an audience. You're building that person that's going to be a donor in the future, that's going to be an audience member, and that's going to have that kind of long-lasting, deep connection with your organization. And I think that's such an important part of the education experience.
I really love that point, Brian. Even just thinking about all the relational touch points, performance is such a beautiful thing and it's such an exchange of energy, but learning education is so interactive and it's so human, and there are all these different relational touch points in the learning process. And when you think about what it is to build a relationship with your audience and drive that loyalty, it becomes really clear the role that education can play in supporting that endeavor. So thank you for sharing. Laura, I'd love to hear from the FundraiseUp perspective. When you think about education as an opportunity, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for us, what I think is, kind of interesting, and I heard this from my fellow panelists as well, is that you've got education programs as being a gateway to connect with individuals that, might not otherwise seek out this opportunity, this education or this learning opportunity. And, in this context of, economic challenges and, the kind of disintegration of the public school system with lack of arts, there really is this need to change the structure of how we deliver these programs and make sure that arts gets out there and people have these opportunities. And, as part of this, I'd really love to focus on a couple of our clients that are actively doing this. One of our clients is Brick Brooklyn. They're a cultural organization in Brooklyn, New York, dedicated to presenting and fostering the arts and media. They've been building programs and education programs to address limited representation of marginalized voices. And they provide this through workshops, courses, and mentorship opportunities to different skill levels, to really help to bring underrepresented communities under the arts umbrella and allow them to, access these tools and get the possibilities of being creative and finding their voices. And they're able to do this through collaborations with local schools, organizations, and artists to provide these pathways. So again, like looking at ways to operate outside of traditional modes of delivery, to get those voices heard. Another client that we work very closely with since 2021 is Music Cares. You often see them at the Grammys as the organization that solves the problem for many musicians that have unstable income in a gig-based economy. So offering workshops, seminars, and resources to address financial literacy, health education, and addiction recovery for musicians. So the above programs demonstrate the critical role of supportive education systems in music and arts education.
Thank you for bringing us back to the impact side of this conversation, Laura. I think, of course, we're talking sort of about building relationship with your audience, but there is also this impact piece that is so important to each of us and to everyone here. And I love hearing those real examples of organizations that are really doing this. But let's talk about that in more gritty, granular detail, right? It's one thing to say like, yes, education is an opportunity. Yes, you should have a program. It's a totally different thing to think about like how you go about doing that. What is important to focus on if you're thinking about developing an education program or scaling it or really turning it into a working, thriving part of your business, of your organization. So I would love to hear like, from this panel where you think folks should focus to build a truly thriving education program, one that both fuels that passion for the arts and keeps our students and patrons coming back and engaging with all the different parts of our organization. And Brian, I'm going to kick it to you first one more time.
Sure. I think that we're going to focus on some of the mechanics of being able to do that, because as we talked about, arts organizations are, there's not a lot of extra time. People are feeling like pressure from a number of different sides. So I think first you've got to solve the needs of the community and have it be a successful and seamless experience for your community, and then the needs for your staff as well. So starting from the community, you have to think about, are your offerings, again, meeting the needs of the community today? And is it easy for them to then access those offerings? Are they mobile friendly? Is it really easy for someone to just see something they're interested in a few clicks, register and enroll? Because you don't want to be blocking that access at that first point. You don't want that to be a friction, have a lot of friction there. So mobile friendly, seamless. Does it save their account information, enable them to like collect all of your offerings in essentially a shopping cart experience and check out? They're demanding like a smooth, seamless experience, and that's really important in serving the needs of the community. But then it's important on the other side. I think nonprofits in particular are really great at like being creative and stitching lots of things together and putting more effort in. But you're not just going to be able to add education programs or grow your education programs if your staff aren't able to handle it, particularly around all the administrative work that goes along with it. So, if they're just wrangling multiple solutions that are poor fit, think about the real cost of your staff time. And so having a real smooth, seamless experience for staff is important in growing that education impact. Garrison Arts Center in New York is a great example of this. They offer 85 classes. They were using a shopping cart that was really built for physical products, great for selling t-shirts and mugs, but not so great for signing up for education programs. And it was really hard for them to scale their educational offerings because it was asking patrons for shipping information when they were checking out, and didn't make any sense. They were wrangling a bunch of spreadsheets to figure out rosters. So once they got on CourseStorm, they actually more than doubled their enrollments in their classes just because of that seamless experience for them. And then their staff was able to focus on creating a thriving education program versus, being in what we call Excel hell of managing all those spreadsheets. So,
yeah, I really appreciate those more tactical examples. And I think what I heard so much from you, Brian, and in that share was like friction, like removing friction consumers have such high expectations, even subconsciously. And going back to my share, if you're trying to learn something new, you're already taking a leap, you already maybe feel uncomfortable, you're already having a lot of reasons not to do it. Any little bit of friction can add to that, like, man, not today. Maybe I won't do this.
Yep.
And I think, like, to your point on the staff side, right? Like, we are lean generally in this space. We're trying to do a lot of things. And so when organizations that we're talking to are evaluating technology, for example, evaluating new process, it is so much about how can you just make your lives easier so that, to your point, you can focus on programming, on spreading the word, on doing the work that you're there to do. So I love those shares. Sam, I'd love to hear from your perspective what kind of pieces, what actions make a really thriving program.
Yeah, definitely. I think that those are all really great points, and I'm gonna probably copy a few of them. But yeah, I mean, at Spektrix, we're founded on the belief that engagement with artistic, cultural, and entertainment experiences is essential to the health of individuals and communities. These experiences are so vital. They inspire, they uplift, they entertain, they financially support. But they're also really uniquely placed to break down social division. It allows us to get rid of our differences, feel a common humanity, explore new perspectives, new ways of thinking. And that belief underpins our vision and mission at Spektrix to support a thriving arts and culture sector. And that's why we're also the only ticketing and CRM platform to certify as a B Corp, which is evidenced our commitment to using business as a force for social good. And education is such a critical part of that and those programs. So we see organizations like Wolverhampton Grand in England, they're building really long-term relationships through community and ambassador schemes, creative projects, and they're seeing that pay off in a really larger, more diverse audience at their events. And we also get to see organizations like Sacramento Philharmonic in California who are using their pipeline tools in Spektrix to really map that engagement that they're having with school districts. And in that, and this is going back to a lot of what Brian said, because they're having all of that information in their Spektrix system in one place, they're able to see all of the past actions, the future actions that they want to take. They can see how people are moving through those stages of communication and how that relationship is building and growing. And again, all of that data being in the same place is so important because my favorite, if somebody leaves, if they win the lottery and don't come to work the next day, having all of that in the same spot is going to be super important for you to maintain those relationships because those are going to be so vital in being able to grow these education programs and get them more engaged with all of the other aspects of your organization as well.
That's great. So, Sam, a lot of what I was hearing from you in that answer is like the infrastructure to support kind of the shared picture of your audience, which then facilitates like having a thriving program because you understand what they're engaging with, where in their journey they're most engaged, and you can reach them at those really powerful times and make sure that they're getting like eyes on the offerings that are most relevant to them and however else we want to talk about marketing. But I think like that piece of like how your data is communicating, it sounds critical as well to making sure that your education program can thrive and can fuel the rest of your efforts. Laura, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of points. I'd love to jump on Samantha's piece about just having to have good data in place and having worked in nonprofit and fundraising for many, many years. I don't think you can ever underestimate the value of having strong data and knowing who your donors are, knowing who your participants are, and being able to report on that and track that so that you're able to, ultimately leverage that for raising more money or building better connections. And I think this all ties back to nonprofits, really do exist to solve problems within the community. They're created by people to make their community better, whether it's healthcare or arts organizations, they're all created to solve the lack of resources that are available within a particular environment. So school, arts in particular, created to solve lack of resources in school systems, accessibility within communities, and to really allow voices to be heard. Sadly, this access to funds doesn't automatically align to the impact that that organization might be having. And so that goes back to data. If you want to go and, connect with somebody, if you've worked in sales or show me you know me, it's very similar in fundraising, it's very similar in data. You need to understand what is going to make an impact and that connection. And it's up to organizations to be able to create that story around impact. This is what will drive participation to your programs. This is what will drive that connection. And sadly, you really can't have one with the other. I don't know if you've ever worked in an organization where, like at United Way, Greater Toronto, and I worked there 20 years ago, we were always writing these stories for $5.50 a day. You can help buy a book for a child or lunch or something like that. And you need to be able to make it tangible and help nonprofits understand what that is. So if I want to tie it back to FundraiseUp, we do offer that completely frictionless experience to anyone. So if you've got a donor coming to your website and they want to make a contribution, the entire site was created in order to create the easiest opportunity and the easiest way to make that donation as possible. I'm coming to the site. I'm in Canada. It speaks Canadian English to me. Color is spelled COLOUR. It's got Canadian dollars on it. If I'm in Quebec, it's speaking to me in Quebecois French. It will make me a perfect CRA compliant tax receipt. It's beautiful because there's no part of that experience that feels foreign to me. There's no part of that experience that feels like it's going outside of the nonprofits giving me this website or this experience to make this contribution. So it's meeting me where I am, understanding where I'm coming from, and understanding how to make this as easy and pain-free as possible. And so I don't even have to think about that process as I'm going through making that donation. I think I went on a bit of a tangent there, but I think I drove a couple points there about impact and connection.
I think what I heard from you as well is like seamlessness, right? So when we're thinking even about when we collect donations as related to education and learning, it's all about like being in front of the end user at the right time. And that is such a huge function of how our systems speak to each other. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's dig a little bit deeper into this idea of integration, because it is so important, right? Our education program cannot exist in a silo. It will fail like anything that exists in a silo. It has to be integrated. So when we think about kind of how we actually bring that to life in reality, what do y'all think, especially speaking from these three different sort of platforms that do all play nicely together? And I'm going to start with you, Sam, particularly because Spektrix is a CRM, right? It is kind of a universal data collection platform. So tell us, when you think about integrating education into the rest of your organization, what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every touch point that you have with a customer, a donor, everyone that's going through your organization, that's all building your relationship. So making use of the data from all of those touch points of engagement across all of your programs. So that can include classes, camps, ticket purchases, memberships, subscriptions, donations, all of those pieces. That's really going to deepen the relationship that they have with you. And if you have all of that data and you can use it, that's going to make it even more impactful and powerful. So for example, from a Spektrix perspective, if you have that information that a customer has registered their children for a class or a camp at your organization, you can use that to say, in the checkout flow, make a more segmented ask directly to them for a donation that can support more activities that are specific to them. So maybe they're going to be more likely to give to like an education program or a youth fund, things like that. So you can use all of those touch points to make it really bespoke for that customer and really speak to them. And then that can then drive revenue to other parts of your program. For example, like offers for the parents to come and join a live event or something like that. We do have a really good example of this. We work with Z Arts. They run a membership scheme that gives access to those classes and school holiday activities. But within that membership, you also get things like discounted tickets. So it's really using that education program and blending it in with everything else that they offer to deepen your relationship with that organization and really make it multi-layered and more and stronger, really. And Z Arts, they also, just to be as accessible as possible, they offer that membership for free for families who do have like a tighter budget, families who have like grandparent carers, students, or looking after children. And even though they do have that free membership, they still encourage those who can afford it to pay and do so, as well as a wider call to action to really, again, deepen that impact with Z Arts. And it's really, really deepened the connection to the community that Z Arts is then serving.
Yeah, you've really painted a picture for us, Sam. I think of like the power of the flywheel. That's a word I use a lot in the world of marketing, right? But it's this idea of like, we love as people, we love things that feel personal to us. We love relevance. We love personalization. This is for me. And this idea that you can tap into these parts of your organization, like learning, like education, that are already so engaging and so interactive, and tap into that and connect it to other pieces of what you're trying to do, whether it's getting them to engage with another part of your organization or getting them to donate. By pulling that thread of relevance, you can really start to like see momentum and create this inertia, and also like you said, Sam, really build that loyalty and that affinity for your organization, which is so critical. So really appreciate those thoughts. Laura, I'd love to hear a little bit from the FundraiseUp perspective when you think about integrating these efforts. What comes to mind?
Yeah, I think, to make education programs work for growth, nonprofits really need to tie them closely to their mission so it feels like a natural part of what they do, making that impact clearer for supporters. So getting different teams like fundraising and marketing involved, because education programs create great stories and can attract donations and raise the organization's profile. I think I spoke previously just on how this is so cyclical and everything is such a symbiotic relationship within the organization. Partnerships is something that I'm very passionate about, because you can't operate any of these you can't achieve anything within a bubble. So partnering with schools, businesses, and other groups can help to expand the reach and bring in new opportunities, and often do so at a significant cost savings as well. Leveraging networks, like there are so many things that can happen when the two right people get in the room and just talk. So think as you're trying to put these programs together, who within your network could potentially add on to this idea and help grow it. And then use the program to engage a community more deeply with events or workshops that can bring in volunteers and supporters. Ultimately, going back to good data, track your successes and share them with donors, and to show the program's value and attract more support. And there's other ways too. Social impact organizations are becoming a bit more prevalent in the nonprofit space. So we work very closely with an organization called Furniture Bank, based out of Toronto, Canada. They are an organization that operates as a social enterprise, but they are very much a nonprofit, and they bring in furniture and they provide it to families that want to create a home but don't have the means to do so. And they've recently created an incredible partnership actually with IKEA Canada that they talked about last week at our conference in New York. And IKEA is providing them with all of the returned furniture that is being brought to every school or brought back to every store. So that happened with one conversation. So it just, think about the network, think about what you hope your outcomes would be, and then also think about the people that can maybe help you make those things a reality. That's where magic happens.
Totally. I really appreciate that perspective, Laura, because I think when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking a lot about the data and integration in terms of like how our systems talk to each other. And you helped bring it out to like when we think about the network too, like that's also a piece of integration. How is our organization integrated with our community and with the other organizations that can help us? So I appreciate you just kind of broadening my perspective on the conversation around integration. So thank you. Brian, let's round it out with you. When you think about integration to facilitate thriving holistic organizations, education and everything else, what comes to mind?
Yeah, I'm going to say some of the same things that Samantha and even Laura said. I think that the education programs. I love the word you use, like a flywheel. Natasha is part of that flywheel. I've seen lots of arts organizations in their annual reports, and they say, "Where did we get revenue?" And there's this nice pie chart of ticket sales, donations, education offerings, and they're all separate colors and separate pieces of the pie. But really, those should all be blended together. There are not disparate things, and so. And having those things work together can create that really circular flywheel. For example, we're seeing organizations ask for a donation during the checkout process for an education offering. Samantha mentioned that same thing happening during ticket sales. We've even seen that happen. So that can happen at the point of, hey, I'm about to sign up for this offering. Can also happen afterwards with a survey, follow-up survey after the class to the roster, and then an ask for a donation. They've had this experience, they've had that immediate benefit that they've felt, and this is a great time then to follow up and ask them to become donors. And so I think not thinking those things as really separate pieces of the pie, but really a holistic approach to the relationship with your community, so important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great reminders, Brian, and it also tees up my last kind of big question for this conversation, which is about fundraising and specifically storytelling. And I can't remember if it was Sam or Laura or Brian. Someone said that education provides great stories, and those stories are so powerful when it comes to fundraising. And Brian, you mentioned at the start of this conversation, one of the realities that organizations are kind of always facing is financial pressure, right? So fundraising is critical. We want to keep these programs alive and thriving, and we need them desperately in this world. So I'd love to hear some of the tips and tricks that the panel can share to help folks on this call package their education program wins and stories into a narrative that can move donors to action. And Laura, I'd love to start with you and any thoughts that you have.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm going to say anything groundbreaking on this. I mean, ultimately, people give to people. That's what fundraising is about. It's fundraising is an emotional process. Giving a gift is an emotional process. You have to drive a moment where something about that moment is making an individual want to contribute. Sometimes it could be trauma, sometimes it could be hopeful, sometimes it could be fear, but there's some sort of emotion within that moment that is compelling the donor to give. Plug for FundraiseUp. We do make this very easy. Canadian Red Cross uses FundraiseUp for its donation forms, largely because we're able to get campaigns up and running in under 3 hours, which is their SLA for any major disaster. But without the stories and without understanding the emotional component of it, there really is nothing to ignite that fire. So, yeah.
Yep. I mean, I don't disagree. And again, like it's like anytime we're trying to move someone to action, it's such an emotional process. Brian, let me hear your thoughts. When you think about packaging up these stories and maybe even getting these stories, what comes to mind?
Well, I think that education programs aren't often the most visible part of organizations. These organizations, it's more about their performances that get a lot of the sort of press and fanfare. So I think there's a real opportunity there, again, to start to tell those stories of the impact they're making through education. We have some organizations like Caramoo House in Cleveland, Ohio. They're offering these sliding scale access to their educational offerings. So they're helping serve communities that traditionally might have had access blocked for one reason or another, and they want to make sure that financial is not one of those reasons. So they're providing all of this great offerings and serving underserved communities. The key then is collecting that information. If you can collect a bit of demographic information and then be able to tell those stories back of, look who we were able to serve, look where your donations have gone to. That's going to help elevate. It's going to help inspire donors, create a more emotional connection, and really, yeah, create a more healthy relationship with your donors and your education community.
Yeah, I appreciate the specificity there, Brian, getting into that kind of like demographic information and tying it back to folks when they're in that frame of mind, so you can really hit them at the right moment. Sam, we're going to round it out with you from the Spektrix perspective. When you think about these stories that support fundraising, what would you like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I think it's a word that we've said a lot today. I really think it's all about impact and being able to tell those stories. And the education programs that you have are playing a huge role in that. So telling those stories is key, but also being transparent, telling audiences exactly what those donations are funding. As Laura said, it's an emotional process giving a gift. And if I see something online that's like Gen Up FY24, I'm not really emotionally compelled to give to that. But if I can see exactly what my money would be used for, and I know that it will have an impact, maybe not only on me, but the community I'm in, I'm going to be a lot more compelled to give that donation. Bridport Arts Center, one of the organizations that we work with, they do a really great job of this on their support page. So at each membership level, where traditionally you would probably see a lot of benefits for that specific donor, what they list is what that amount funds. So if it funds a free ticket for a carer when they accompany an audience member, or subsidizing a place in their youth theater for a full term, or for like a local young person to come and experience that organization, having all of those there and really telling that story is going to be a lot more compelling for the donor. So using your education program and celebrating the wins from that and highlighting the impact that you have on your community is going to be super compelling to existing donors as well as those that are new to your organization.
That's awesome, Sam. I really appreciate, again, those specific examples. I also did want to shout out, we've mentioned a lot of great organizations that all three of us work with. My colleague Greg in the chat has been dropping links to those organizations. So if you want to check those organizations out, both just from what they're doing in their community standpoint, but also if you want to kind of pull ideas based on what the panel has mentioned today, those links are there for you in the chat. Oh my goodness, 10 minutes to the hour. This conversation has flown by. I would love to wrap us up with just like final takeaways for the folks who are here. If you were to summarize kind of a key learning that you want everyone here to walk away with, what would it be? And I will throw it to you first, Brian.
All right. I would say focus on the whole. And that's a couple different ways. It's the whole person. I think, people want to be entertained. They want to support, and they really want to connect and participate. So an ed program helps them be real participants and can round out the ways that, again, your organization connects with your community. They can be a supporter, a ticket holder, and a participant. And related to that, engage the whole community. Think about your offerings. Are you meeting the needs of the entire community? Are there opportunities for you to access new communities? I think, as Samantha said, a lot of first-time ticket purchasers out there. How are you connecting with that audience of the future? And I think the education offerings are really important there to engage the whole community. And then I'll say a little poetic license here, but holistic data. Connect your systems together. So you get a holistic view. I think we've all said that. That's so important to, again, seeing the whole life cycle of the relationship and be able to tell those compelling stories.
I love it. Whole person, whole community, Holistic data. What about you, Laura? What are some of your key takeaways as we think about going into the end of the year and into 2025?
Yeah. So end of year is, the busiest time of year for so many reasons. It's the busiest time of year for fundraisers. Traditionally the biggest time of year for fundraising as everyone's trying to get in their end of year donations, but it can also be the most impactful. This is the time of year when people are feeling most generous. And it's also the end of the year for a lot of your programs and your education programs. So this should also be maybe the time of year where you have the most to share as well as to ask. So within that, you can use the success of your education programs to create compelling stories and show donors how their participation this year has made an incredible impact. Education changes lives. Make sure that your campaigns tell this story, and then never discount the benefits of leveraging your network to create partnerships. Don't be afraid to ask if others want to be involved, and there's a lot of power in coming together with other organizations and other people to really try and boost each other up.
Mm. All right, so tap into the network, tell the compelling stories, and capitalize on the momentum of the season is what I'm hearing. Sam, what are your final thoughts for the audience today?
Yeah, thank you. I will keep it really simple, which is just stay connected. So connect your education to your fundraising, to your marketing, to your box office. Really create a cohesive, holistic offer that represents your entire organization and the impact that you have on your community. Connect your education program participants with your main stage productions. Help them understand and engage with that complete offer, and connect your education software with your central customer relationship management tools. Keep that conversation going in real time, capture those really powerful stories, all of that good data, the statistics, and with that, build lasting links with some of your most enthusiastic patrons.
I love it. Thank you, Sam. Stay connected. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left. Normally, I would open this up for Q&A. If you have any burning questions, please use the Q&A function or drop them in the chat. I do have one question for the panel before we sign off. Just time for one, probably. We touched on this in this conversation, but I would love to hear from y'all what sets a great education program apart from the rest. And then, like, as a secondary question, what should organizations prioritize? How should they prioritize when they think about building a thriving ed program? We've talked about a lot of things. So two-part question, and anyone can jump in and provide thoughts on this one.
I'm happy to jump in.
Yeah.
I think a really great education program, and I think programming in general for an organization, is that it's representative of the community that you're serving. And I think the biggest thing there is understanding the community that you're serving. So using everything that you know about them to be able to put that offering to something that was really going to resonate and, again, impact. How many times will I say it? But things that will really impact the people that you have. So understanding your audiences, knowing your community, and having education programs that really tie back to what they actually want.
I love that. Any other thoughts from the panel? And sorry, just to build on that, Sam, it sounds like what you would prioritize then is that understanding of your community, starting with that deep understanding. Yep.
Yeah. And just to build on that, if you've got that understanding of the community, you can understand the need, and then help build from there. I think also in doing that, you need to make sure that there's an audience for that program as well. So again, it just goes back to having a strong understanding of what it is you're trying to fill, what it is you're trying to accomplish, and have a really clear perspective of what you're trying to impact, so that you're able to replicate that and to grow and make it better moving forward.
Yeah, that's awesome, Laura. It sounds like understanding and also collecting feedback, right? Like understanding if it's working, if it's resonating, if there is an audience for it, and then adjusting accordingly.
Yeah. I'll just echo what Laura and Samantha said. I mean, I think these organizations are deeply connected with the communities and using all of that knowledge they have about the community to create an education program. It's not going to look the same in every town. The offerings are not going to be the same. The needs are different. And I think the more responsive you can be to those unique needs of your community, the better it's going to be received and the more successful it's going to be in driving that whole flywheel of engagement for your organization.
Wonderful. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Brian, Samantha, Laura, for joining us today. This has been such a delightful conversation. Hopefully, some actionable things that everyone here can take going into the end of the year and into 2025. If you have questions about any of the organizations represented here, CourseStorm, Spektrix, FundraiseUp, we will be following up with the recording and links to dig in deeper on any of this. And of course, have an amazing day and thank you for joining us. We look forward to more conversations like this in the future.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.